All right, and we're live. Rob Tracz, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks so much. I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah, no doubt. I really appreciate you doing it and taking the time here. So, as I said right off air, I like the message that you have of blending the physical side of strength with the mental resilience and really relating that into helping people in business developing. I think there's a synergy between all those, but it's not talked about enough. So, seeing the work that you do, I just think you have a really powerful message, man.
Oh, thanks, dude. I appreciate that. Really means a lot.
No doubt. Yeah. So how did this all kind of start for you? Like what first got you into the world of coaching from like the physical side, which inevitably led you into now the work that you do with prime performance coaching and really helping business development and entrepreneurs get to where they want to be?
Yeah, yeah. I guess to really kick it off, I got to go back way back, like young kid kind of age. Uh, my parents got divorced pretty young, as I was kind of telling you real quickly off air, and they got split. So I left Philadelphia with my where my dad was, and we eventually found ourselves in the Poughkeepsie region of New York. I bounced around a couple of different school districts when I was young, and changing schools frequently makes it very difficult to make and maintain friendships, especially at a young age because didn't have cell phones and things like that back then, so it's hard to stay connected. Um, and then once we finally found where we were going to consider calling home, I started to actually make a couple friends. But at the time, I was just like a dweeby video game, TV, kind of chill out on the couch, eating chips and ice cream kind of thing. Until this one kid, Sean, that I started hanging out with a lot, his dad was the youth football coach. And he convinced me to come out to play on the youth football team. So I was kind of like resistant to it at first because I'd never played any sports before. But eventually I'd given in, and I learned two valuable lessons that first day of football practice. The first one being that you can't wear jeans to football practice. So that right off the bat was like, all right, well, I guess I need to get some shorts and figure out what I got to do here. And the second thing I learned was that I noticed the cooler, popular kids, they seemed to breeze through the warm ups in the beginning. They seemed to know all the plays. They could run fast. They had all the friends on the teams. And I figured, hey, if they make the warm ups look easy and I'm struggling here for like that warm up lap, maybe I should start to take this warm up thing a little bit more seriously. And at the time, just as a little kid, it was difficult to do all those things, but I started practicing at home and starting to do some of the sit ups, some of the stretches, some of the other like jumping jacks and things. And that was the early stages of me building discipline. That was opening me up to taking care of my body, getting into better shape. And not long afterwards, I started hitting puberty and started playing a little bit more. I continued with my exercise routines at home with a little bit of like weights and things. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just being active, not sitting on the couch anymore. And that was the gateway to everything else because the more that I exercised, the more that I get to play. The more I get to play, the more friends I started having on the team. The more friends I have on the team, the more birthday parties I got invited to. And if I wanted to go to the birthday parties, my mom made sure that my grades were always up. So that became another domino in the effect. And then sports became like the new family for me because my family at home was kind of divided. So different sports teams and playing with everybody, that became my new family. And that carried on to college. And then in college, having that realization that I'm not going to be able to play competitive sports for long, but I knew I loved the gym. So I stuck with that. I went to grad school for exercise science, and I continued on with that because I figured if I could stay in the weight room with the athletes, I could continue to grow my family. And then that was an easy transition for me to get into the coaching realm.
This episode is brought to you by Paluva. Paluva is a new zero-drop minimalist shoe with a distinctive five-toe design. Paluvas give you the most authentic barefoot style experience, but with sufficient cushioning to use for all manner of everyday movement, fitness, and athletics. I've been using these new shoes in both strength training and my daily walks, and I have to tell you, they are by far the best minimalist shoe that I've come across. The popularity of minimalist shoes have been on a big upswing, but Paluvas are a step ahead of every other zero-drop wide box shoe shoe because of the critical feature of individual five-toe articulation, a separate slot for each of your toes. This allows for correct dynamic movement of the foot through walking or running, which is impossible when toes are encased in a single box. Now, minimalist shoes have faced controversy in recent years about causing injury from inappropriate use. So the big picture mission is start walking and living in Paluvas as often as possible. Use your specialized running shoes, basketball shoes, work boots, or high heels when you need to, but wear Paluvas as much as possible to reawaken the natural functionality of the human foot to stand, walk, run, and perform. And Paluvas also have a sleek, cool design, so you get a barefoot shoe that looks great as well as feels great. And now you can try a pair of Paluvas with no risk and realize that these are the most comfortable shoes you've ever worn. They are literally designed to feel like you're walking barefoot on a putting green. So you can go visit paluva.com and use a code SC15 for a 15% discount off your first pair. That's SC15 at checkout. Thank you very much. Let's get to the show.
Yeah. Did you kind of recognize in the moment that like this was discipline that you were building up and that was leading you into success? Or was it more like kind of looking back in retrospect, you realized those were the pillars that you were building, at that time?
Yeah, it was definitely retrospect because I didn't actually realize what I was doing was following these principles that I teach now. At the time, it was just I need to be a little bit stronger. I want to be a little bit faster, and the more that I figured, the more that I continued to do it, the better I would get. As pretty much any young kid knows or thinks, it's the more is better, and that's not necessarily true. As I went to find out later on in life when I began to shift careers and then get into the prime performance coaching.
Yeah. It is. It's always funny. I think kids are such the perfect model of following your why, and just doing things that make you feel good. It's like without overthinking like what you're doing and is this leading to like something that I want. It's just like, oh, like I'm having more friends. I feel better. Like, oh, I'm doing pretty good at sports. Like not thinking that these things are developing. Like you're just doing it because you feel. I think sometimes we lose that as adults of like always thinking that there needs to be a reason behind everything you're doing and what's the ROI that we're getting on this. Where if you look to kind of just back in the day, like, yeah, you just did things that kind of felt good for you.
Yeah, and that's pretty much like my main message that I try to teach people is to just like, hey, just look at what works for you. Just pay attention to that and just keep doing more of that. And
Mhm.
you pretty much can apply that to most areas of your life. And we definitely have lost that. Like as a kid, you're like, oh, this feels good, or this has that kind of payoff, or I recognize that this is going on. But just as you said, nowadays it's a lot harder to kind of buy into things.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like because there's responsibilities that are on your shoulder, but I'm always curious of like, is there something more to that? Like, are we just overthinking it as adults and stuff? It's like kind of like when you feel better and like you start seeing it, yeah, just keep following that. That's probably, your instincts are probably leading you into the right direction.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So what was the early days of training like? As you said, you went to school for exercise science and then got into the world of working with people in strength and conditioning. What was the early days like that when you started working with people?
The early days were great because I was in private sector. It was easy. You kind of take on as many clients as you want, work whenever you want, having keys to the gym. It was pretty much just kind of doing things on your own. Um, and so it was really great. I was able to quickly scale my book of clients up. I was working 12 to 13, sometimes even 14-hour days, doing that 7 days a week too, because I didn't see a reason for me to take off. If I could just continue keep working, it's like, oh, great, I'm making more money. Until I got to a point where I was only working. I had continued that 7 days a week pattern for almost 3.5 years. And I was missing out on holidays, working Christmas, birthday parties, New Year's, Thanksgiving, you name it. I literally didn't take any time off of work until my dad had passed. Actually, I got a voicemail from him that he had found out that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And when his time was limited, I chose to continue working, even up until the point where he had moved into hospice. I was driving down to Philadelphia and in the evening to be by his bedside, and then I would drive back to Connecticut in the morning to work all day, and then the entire day just kind of praying in the back of my head that he wouldn't pass until I was at least by his side. Drive back down. I did it for about a week. I think he was in hospice for about 4 days. So it was like almost a whole week. I was kind of driving up and down, running on sunflower seeds and like energy drinks. That's all I was like eating and drinking. And I took off the day that he did pass, and I took off the day of the funeral. And then I went right back to work for another year or so without stopping. And it was a Friday evening. It was a holiday weekend. A lot of clients were away a year after my dad passed, and I was trying to fill my schedule. And I guess that full schedule was shifted from that money to now it's a distraction from that sadness of what my life has actually become.
Mm.
And then I was rejected and denied that distraction. I couldn't get anybody to fill my schedule. I had an opening on the weekend, first time in like years, and that little bit of downtime allowed me to have some awareness and look back on what's going on. And that's really where I kind of like, hey, what am I doing? Where am I at? Because as a strength and conditioning coach, you usually should be in somewhat kind of shape. You should be kind of strong. You should be eating well. You should be like the poster boy for strength and conditioning. But I wasn't. I didn't even recognize myself. And that's when I had to like look back. I was like, hey, what has worked for me over the years? And then I realized it was taking care of my body, really pushing myself, building that resilience, building some intentionality with what I'm consuming, really paying attention to myself, who I am, what's working for me. And then I got into the next levels of which was like, okay, how do I optimize my day? How do I surround myself with better players? How do I continue to give back more than just what I'm currently doing? And then just reflecting on all that bloomed into what I have now as my coaching program.
Yeah. Wow, man. That's a hell of a journey. So, um, looking back on that time, like working every day, like not taking the day off and stuff like that till something, really tragic happens personally from there. Like, do you look back of asking like, why was I working so many days? Like, was it just because you were in just like that cycle of just, well, this is what I do, and it's just I don't know what to do, else, or was there something else that was kind of pulling you in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I've done um, a lot of like internal kind of diving in, and I haven't gone and I haven't had any like professional advice explaining this to me, but from what I've discovered myself is that I think because my family had split at such a young age for me, I think I have a younger sibling. My mom had remarried. I had a stepbrother, a new half brother, a lot of siblings, a lot of rivalry, like fighting for attention. My dad's away, this and that. I think I assumed that just the more I worked, I wore it as a badge. Like, oh, I'm too busy. Everybody needs me. They need me to train. They need me to coach them. And then it became like, oh, I'm too busy for my friends, and that just fed into that I'm needed. I'm really well needed. And I think that I was just seeking more and more of that attention. It wasn't necessarily the money; it was that attention, that needing of being needed. And then when my dad got sick, I was so clouded with what my actual direction was, where I was trying to go. Is instead of paying attention to those who care and spending the time with those who can give me the attention that really matters, I was pushing it and going somewhere else. And I think that once I finally got to that point where I didn't have somebody who needed me for the weekend and I had that open schedule, I think that's when it came crashing down on me like, oh, I'm just being used for everybody else. Because I mean, they're not using me, but of course, they want my help and they want my guidance and things like that.
Yeah. It is weird how you can wear that badge of honor in productivity and just busyness, and how quickly that can just shift to your identity. I remember, so I mean, early on when I got into coaching and personal training and I was really good at it, and I remember it was like the first thing that I ever did in my life that I felt like I was really good at and also excelling at. So it's like, well, might as well do this every day and just, work 15, 16 hours and put it in. But I remember times like if I lost a client or if I had an open time, it was almost like an attack on my identity of like, well, this is all I do. Like, this is where I put all of my esteem. So if I'm losing at that, like, what else do I have? And it's a weird, just it's pendulum shift of emotions that can come within that time. And it's hard to get out of that cycle from there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes something that all of a sudden you have that moment where you just look back and be like, what do I actually want to do with life? Who am I? And it's hard because, and I bring it up because I think so many people are in the boat that you're in, of like just in that robot mode of just doing the things that they've seen production, but now they're just in a state of like autopilot and they don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I love yeah, that point there exactly, where I would almost get like offended when somebody like needed to pause their training or something for a little while. And it took a while for me to realize like, hey, maybe they have some other things going on that they don't feel comfortable sharing, and don't look at it as like it's offensive to me. Like think of somebody else. Get outside of my own head for a second.
Hmm.
But I also really love that you said robot mode there, because I've spoken on stage a few times at a couple of conferences, and that's exactly what I labeled it as, robot mode, because robots are great at being efficient and getting work done. But the problem with robot mode is it's easy to get stuck in there. And when you're stuck in robot mode, you lose that human component of yourself, which is that consciousness or that awareness of what's going on around you. And that's literally what had happened to me in that situation.
Yeah. So, how was the pivot for you from this when you recognized this and realized you wanted to make a change and go into really a new realm, which is now a lot of the work that you're doing right now, and you built, the 6 pillars of how you coach? What was that transition period like? Was it a complete like changeover, or was it more of like a drastic shift? Like, was it time where you spent by yourself figuring out exactly what did you want to build and how you wanted to proceed? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, no, it was a slow one. It's still a transition too, as I was saying before, how I'm still training a decent amount of people in the fitness realm and sports performance, and like I was saying, I don't think I'll ever totally be done with that. I think that's part of my identity, and I love catching up, talking about what's going on, and just connecting with other people in the gym, continuing to work together towards a goal. So when it's in the fitness realm itself, so that'll always be a part of me. But uh, transitioning into the new coaching and new realm, it wasn't as difficult as I had thought it was going to be in the beginning. I thought it was just going to be like a cut cold change. And then I realized like, hey, these are the principles that I live my life by, and I'm sure other individuals could benefit from this too. So in the beginning, I just started slowly kind of introducing things. What my coaching calls are now, they started in the weight room and in the gym. It was talking about different principles and talking about the different things and how people are feeling with different aspects of, are they feeling a little overwhelmed with their schedule? Are they feeling supported? Do they have a good community? How are they mindful and intentional with what they're consuming? Not just nutrition in their meals, but also the media and the entertainment and things. And those conversations just kind of evolved and continued to grow, and to the point where people were more interested in spending more time talking about these other things than just getting the workouts in. And then that's when I needed to kind of separate a little bit, just kind of pulling it apart and kind of differentiating it. My first principle is building the resilience, and that's still going to be, I use a framework that I created, the resilience matrix, and there's two components to that. The x-axis is the physical, so that's pushing yourself physically out of your comfort zone, which is pretty easy to do in the gym. So I bring a lot of people back to the gym when they come to me. But the other half of that is the y-axis on that matrix, and that's the heat. I like to say, I in the visual representation of the framework, there's a diamond in the center of this graph. So diamonds are created under immense amounts of heat and pressure. So that pressure on that x-axis being the physical comfort zone, pushing yourself, and then the y is that heat, so the cognitive challenge and how much cognitive load you're taking on. And you can plot yourself on this grid by taking a step back and bringing awareness to how hard are you pushing yourself physically? How hard are you pushing yourself mentally? What are the new skills and challenges that you're taking on? Because if you're pushing yourself too hard, that's where you get into that burnout category. But if you're not pushing yourself hard enough physically or mentally, you get in that comfort corner. And then if you're too much in the mental game, but not enough on the pressure or the physical game, I like to call it the cooked corner, because there's too much heat, so the temperature rises. And then if you have too much pressure and you're challenging yourself too physically, like if you're going to the gym way too often and you're not supplementing it with other modes of learning and growing, then you're going to get in that crushed corner under all that pressure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a little tool that I use to kind of evaluate. But it's easy to bring people back to the gym.
Yeah. It is, I mean, it's such a conduit because it's a, there's an external metric to it that you can see what you're doing. There's like the cognitive side, it does seem like it's a little bit more challenging to know, am I on the right track? Am I putting enough effort into it? Where the gym, it seems like it's a little bit easier for most people to understand whether they are because you feel it in your body. It's like the difference there. I like the axis of the X and Y. I think that's a really good visual that I can see from there. The people that are coming to you and asking for your guidance and help, what's a more common struggle that you're seeing from people? Is it more on are they pushing themselves too much? Is it not enough? Like, what are you seeing kind of the common, like, longest levers of people who are challenged?
Yeah, individuals who are openly coming and seeking help from me, they're kind of stuck in almost like this level of almost like ignorance because they're trying a lot of different things. There's a lot of different avenues and practices that they're doing, and it's usually one of the six principles that I'm teaching is where they're kind of lacking a little bit or they could use more help in. And most recently, it's a lot of individuals coming to me with the social and the communication aspect, which is like principle number five for me. And that's it's a lot of people are having difficulty with that connection now. Even though communication is so easy with social media and use of technology, people are still so distant and it's easily distracted and it's
Mhm.
difficult to have those conversations. And these entrepreneurs are trying to grow their businesses, and you can only go so far doing it yourself. And it makes it a lot easier when you're working with a team and you have other people to support you, and when you're giving back and helping other individuals too. And right now it seems to be a lot of people struggling with that communication aspect.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's because you mentioned networking a lot in the work that you do, which I like. Why do you think it's such a challenge now for people to communicate or kind of the social aspects of it? It's an interesting dilemma that it seems like it's a lot more prevalent nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's because of the technology. It makes the communication so much easier, and it reduces that discomfort of going to in-person events and connecting face to face and having to basically trial by fire, like going out and building those communication and those people skills. And when you don't need to do that as often because it's so cushy behind the technology and the ease of things, your resilience starts to drop. And then when your resilience drops, your comfort zone starts to shrink, and then it makes it harder and harder to break out of that. So then you can build the skills for the different things.
Yeah. That's why the gym is really powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, it just puts you in it. It's funny because I bartended for so many years before this, so it was almost like the built-in social aspect. You have to be chatty, like just to be able to chit chat with people. It's almost like a lost skill nowadays for a lot of people because it is. You can connect and you can send a million messages out to people, but it's kind of a half-baked communication still. Like it's so different than going out and actually being in the presence of somebody and connecting with them, whether it's a social gathering or it's more for business purposes of building up. It is. It does seem like it's fed like it's just half baked is the best word that I can think of from it. It
Yeah.
seems like you're getting a lot like from it, but there's still like an avenue that's missing.
Yeah. It's that's so true. It's so true. Half baked is perfect way to describe that.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot about like stagnation and how a lot of people are in like that stagnant state. What is your definition of stagnation and what are the beginning steps that you see from people who are like feeling stagnated? Is it something that like it builds up over time on there, or kind of what are people coming to you and like asking about? Like they say, I feel stagnated. What are they saying about that?
It's pretty much just being stuck. Everybody's going to have their own definition of it because everyone's going to be stuck in a different spot. So there could be somebody who's they've been stuck in the same position with their job and they're failing to kind of grow because they're lacking the positive and new educational, or they're just lacking that new input that'll help them level up or update what their system is, or like think of like individuals who are stuck in the stone age. They can't get past that technology thing, but I'm just using that as an example, but some other individuals might be lacking that input. Other people might be um, unaware of exactly where they're trying to go. So who's their niche, who's their target audience? They're not really sure who, they don't not really sure what their product even does. I've worked with individuals who have had business for a couple of years, and I'm trying listening to them explain what they do, and it's just so confusing because they don't have an actual product. They don't have a solution to any problems. And I'm like, well, what problem are you solving? What kind of business is this? And when they struggle to identify that, then that's when we got to know, like, oh, we got to start at ground zero. We got to figure out what we're doing, who we're helping, and who we are as an individual first.
Yeah. What's your process of helping people uncover that? It's an interesting thing where so often I've seen people who come in and they say, I want to do XYZ, but they can't really understand like what's the problem that they're trying to solve. Like we get into this mode of just knowing I don't like where I am and I want to go somewhere else, but I don't even really know where to start. What's your process of helping people identify this and then eventually like working them into a process of solving this problem?
Yeah, I'm a huge framework guy, and I love acronyms. So for this is would be under the principle number 4 for me, or principle number 3 about getting clarity and understanding. And I use the framework of the pirate's flag. Big fan of the Pirates of the Caribbeans, so I used to love watching those
Love
movies
it.
all the time.
Mhm.
So the flag is the acronym FLAG. F stands for foundational values. So we got to dive in deep. So what are the values? What are your values as an individual? What makes you unique? Like what are these? What do you hold true to yourself? For example, for myself, my values are pace. So I like to say go at your own pace, big acronym guy. PACE for me, PACE, that's just progress towards mastery, adventure seeking, contribute often, and embody freedom of choice. So those are my things. That's how I try to live my life, at least in the value standpoint. So trying to help individuals identify their own values. And then from there, we move into L for flag, foundational values. L is lifestyle traits. So what makes you unique? What are the things that you really like? So for example, my favorite car is the Jeep Wrangler. I've been driving Jeep Wranglers for past like 4 or 5 cars of mine. I love them, and I think they're fun. I think they can kind of be rugged. I think they're very customizable. They can be tough. They can be cool, and that's kind of how I like to look at myself. I like to be a little bit of rugged and tough. I still play rugby. I'm hitting the gym constantly, but I like to be customized. I like to be all my own things, and like to try to be fun.
Mhm.
Another thing is like favorite like kinds of clothes, food, movies, music, favorite color. Like for example, my favorite color is red. It's to me that means love, passion, but it could also mean aggression and strong and bold. So and that's other ways on how I try to portray myself. So diving into those lifestyle traits really helps kind of put a new lens on picture of who
Mm.
you are. We've got foundational values, we've got lifestyle traits, and A is aspirations. So what are our goals? What are our 10, 5, 3, 1, 6 month goals? What do we have? What do we know? Because a lot of people don't have any goals at first. So we just kind of say, hey, what is it we want to be doing? And then we can kind of build out further, like what do we want to get down the road? What do we want to have more quickly? And just kind of setting those goals. They don't have to be concrete at first, but just getting those something down on paper.
Mhm.
And then the last letter, G, is growth opportunities. Kind of doing like a SWOT analysis on yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What can you lean into? What should you shy away from? Uh, for example, I just don't have enough time nowadays with my podcast and social media and things like that. So I just don't have the ability to kind of pump out the content, cutting up the clips and things like that. So I had to hire a team of virtual assistants. So my weakness is available time for things that take a little bit longer, like uploading, downloading, and cutting the clips. So I had
Mhm.
to play into my weakness by hiring somebody. One of my strengths, though, is communication and connection and building challenges and doing different things with the community. So I'm constantly trying to get out, get on different stages and connecting with other individuals and putting the time that I can. So playing to my strength. Then once we have the flag done, then we kind of look into it a little bit more. Hey, where do we need to go? Is this aligned with our business? Do we need to do a business flag? Then we kind of get
Mhm.
into that whole thing as well.
Yeah. What's the I love acronyms too, and shout out to Curse of the Black Pearl, unbelievable movie. Other ones were decent, so but that first one was absolutely amazing. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
like on repeat for me.
oh, it's the best, absolutely. So Johnny Depp is just a human treasure. Um, with those, I like the flag acronym on there. With those, is any of them more challenging, it seems, for people to dive into and really get into the introspection of? Is it values? Is it the aspirations or the growth? Like, is any of them stand out as this is where some people take more time or have more challenge of finding exactly what it is that they do hold valuable or that they do see the opportunities with? Is there any that kind of pop up?
Yeah, the foundational values, those tend to be some of the hardest ones because when you think about values, it's tough because a lot of people are confused on how what can I consider a value? Like is like people spend the most time on that usually right off the bat. But once we kind of dig in a little bit deeper, asking some further questions, even just kind of like painting different pictures of like ourselves kind of helps bring that through. But believe it or not, the lifestyle traits can be also pretty difficult too, because a lot of people kind of get into different things where they're like, oh, my favorite like brand is so and so. I'm like, okay, well, what about it? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I would just really like to have a Rolex because that would be awesome. I'm like, all right, well, are we in the Rolex kind of world right now, or are we still kind of like building our way up and working around different things? And it's like it's it's difficult because you have to take it a step further than just what do you like, what do you have kind of thing. Is that looking into it and like understanding, okay, why do I like this? What about this thing is attractive to me, or why do I enjoy that? And like most people have a favorite color, and not a lot of people understand why they like that color. They
Mhm.
just like, oh yeah, it's cool, I like it. But like, okay, well, what about it? What does the color kind of tell you? How does it make you feel, and things like that.
Yeah. It's always interesting of those first two are really so directed back at yourself, right? It's like the aspirations or growth opportunities. Those are things that you can look out into the world that you want to have. But foundational values and like lifestyle traits, just like the things that are about you, it seems like we have such a harder challenge of looking at those because we're so good at looking at everything else. We're trying to care for other people. And like, for a long time, I know doing any personal work on myself, I felt like it was a waste of time. It's like, I know who I am. Like, I just need to go and just execute and just do, do, do. But I remember I heard a quote of about like the purpose of a goal. It's not to achieve a goal, it's what you become when you get it. And
Mhm.
it's like, so like kind of using that example of like a Rolex, it's like, okay, you have a Rolex on your wrist. Like, how is life different now that you have a Rolex on there? Like, how do you feel about yourself? Like, what's the difference behind it? And I bring it up here, Rob, is because, from seeing people from the fitness end and why 95% of people continuously struggle over and over again in their life to achieve what they want physically is because I don't think we take enough time of actually figuring out what is it that we want? Like, what do we actually value? Like, if you are in the best shape of your life and you get all this, how is life different? How do you approach the world? And once you actually answer those questions, and that's like, how do I respond then in my business? How do I respond with my wife or my husband? How am I relationship with my kids differently if I do this? If you don't get to that, then it's still just like an external thing. And it's so easy just to put that on the back burner on a tough day because you're not actually connected with why you're doing this. And that's why it's this yo-yo cycle of succeed for a little bit and then, fall off and then succeed for a little bit and fall off. And this cycle just continues. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, even if you don't, even if you're not falling off and you just continue to keep seeing success, that's where you fall into that category of having all the success and having the whole world but not being fulfilled because you're just seeking that objective goal without understanding how it's subjectively making you feel. And you're just kind of like pushing, pushing, pushing. It's like, oh, I want to make $5. Okay, I made $5. Now I want to make $10. Now I want to make $100. Now I want to make that without understanding what that value of money actually brings to you.
Yeah. No, I like it. So it's talking about burnout a little bit. When people come to you, they say they're burnout. Like, what are the signs that you see from people who are getting into that feeling of burnout? Are there specific things that you're looking at with people to know, like, yes, you're getting into that burnout, zone, or it's maybe just your alignment of values aren't there? Like, what do you think about like that concept of burnout?
Yeah, so to me, it comes up in a couple of different ways, and usually it shows itself as like the inverse of what each of the principles that I teach kind of bring. So just going through the principles, the first one is about building resilience. So that's physical and mental. So if you personally feel yourself as struggling to not have the energy or have the strength physically to carry on long days, or you're cognitively fried out and you just get home and just veg out, turn the brain off. Those are some early signs that you're suffering burnout in that first pillar. Second one's all about intentional consumption with both your meals and your media. So if you're not intentional with what you're eating, you're just grabbing things quick, you're thinking like fast food and easy like microwave meals. And then also with the TV too, like if you're not paying attention or intentional, like, oh, I want to watch a good movie, or I want to listen to a great podcast where I can learn something. If you're just listening to the music that makes you feel sad or angry, and or you're just watching TV that just you don't even remember what you're watching, and you're just kind of zoned out. Those might be some signs that you're suffering burnout in that category. And the third one is all about clarity and understanding yourself. So if you're lost and you don't really know where you're going, you don't have any goals, you're just kind of aimlessly working just to show up to collect paychecks, that might be an early sign of like, hey, maybe we should develop some kind of direction for what we're doing. P4, principle four, is all about optimization and efficiency. So if you're living a life of chaos and you're constantly late for things and you never seem to have enough time to get anything done that you want to be getting done, that might be a time to kind of like reflect on, hey, what are some rooms that I can kind of improve here before it gets too late and I'm stuck in a burnout spot. And then P5, principle five, is the support communication. How is your support network? Are you feeling isolated? Isolation is a huge one. Like when I was stuck that one Friday night, I was all alone. Everyone's out barbecuing and having fun, but I'm by myself in my apartment, watching TV and not paying attention to what's on TV and stuff like that. Um, and then P6 is all about the contribution, creating luck, I like to say, and having opportunities. If you feel like you're not, opportunities aren't popping up, or there's no doors for you to knock on, that's a sign of like, oh, I'm stuck. I feel like there's no outlet. I'm feeling really, really locked in because there's nowhere to go or grow. That might be a sign also of burnout
Mm,
happening.
yeah. How do you view that as luck? I'm curious about that.
So I dive into once we've got the first five principles kind of down pat, and now we're moving into creating our own luck, or creating opportunities. It's, to me, luck is just when preparation
Hmm.
meets opportunity. So if
Yep.
you have all of the five principles down before that, you've got that preparation point down. So then the only thing now is to start to create the opportunities, because once you find yourself opening or setting up these doors or opportunity doors, you've got the preparation done. All of a sudden you start looking like Mr. Lucky. Like I just happen to like clients, I've random phone numbers texting me like, oh, I got your number from so and so and so and so, interested in about coaching programs and different events and things. And to some people, if you're sitting on the outside and you're someone who's struggling to find clients, you might look at Rob like, oh, Rob just happens to have numbers just randomly popping into asking for coaching. They don't see the preparation of everything I'm doing, or the different events, the connections that I'm making, the events that I show up late or show up early and stay late at. Like they don't see a lot of those. They just see that luck because they're missing out on the other part of the equation.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's such a famous line of the preparation meets opportunity. That's the definition of luck right there. But
Yeah.
it's very law of attraction-y that goes into, which is a woo-woo concept in itself. But I love the woo-woo stuff of getting in. But I always think it's like, talk about like your Jeep Wrangler, right? It's like the first time if you buy a Jeep Wrangler, all of a sudden you start seeing them all over the place. Same color too. It's like they've been there all the time, but now it's just your awareness is there and now you're seeing it all the time. So there is something to that, and you can call it scarcity versus abundance, which is all in there, but there is some real truth to that. And I've done enough work of, feeling that recognition when you are in that zone of like, just putting yourself in those opportunities, things do start to naturally come to you. We call it the harvest mode in the group that I am.
Mhm. Yeah, but so like, yeah, once you have those other principles down, you've got the preparation done, that opens up the opportunity. So then going to other people's events, connecting with other individuals, volunteering time, genuinely doing things that kind of help out with people. Like for example, I just was had a little bit of free time, so I was out on a walk. I helped this woman carrying in a bunch of her groceries. I just happened to be there because I had gotten all my work done that I needed to, my programming and coaching calls. So I decided I want to go outside, help this woman. She knew somebody that I also knew, and then we just got to talking, and then she put me in connection with somebody else, and
Mhm.
that just happened to be luck that I ran into her, or was it all the preparation and things that I kind of put ahead so that I could put myself in a position to run into this woman.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Intentional consumption. I love that pillar of pillar two right there. So it's, especially I see this for, I think it's for both men and women, but it seems like predominantly for young men of this, there's so much like hustle culture out there and like burn the candle at both ends and just keep working over and over again. And it's like it gets into this like toxic like hustle porn that's going into, which it seems like it's like motivating you, but then it just turns into like this entertainment aspect. How do you help people with that intentional consumption pillar?
Yeah, I recently I was on stage at this personal development conference in upstate Connecticut actually. And I shared a story about how my girlfriend Victoria and I had took a road trip up to Montreal. And it was, I don't know where it came through, but I think I was just like trying to come up with any kind of framework that I could. And I was thinking of like the intentional consumption. It is about like the meals and everything you're eating, because you need to have quality proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and because that really builds the structure of you. Then there's also this component of the things that you're consuming, like the media and things like that.
Yeah, the
And then
mental diet. Mhm.
yeah, and then it dawned on me that we're driving my Jeep Wrangler up, and I'm like, okay, well, the proteins kind of like the structure of the vehicle, the kind of carbohydrates that you're consuming is the fuel, and the kind of fats that you're consuming is like the oil in the Jeep that helps you keep it running efficiently. At the same time, driving down the road, looking at the windshield, that's our eyes. That's what eyes and senses what we're consuming. So every once in a while, some bugs and some dirt come up on there, and I just hit it with the wipers and wash it away. So the bugs and dirt is kind of like the doom scrolling or the Netflix
Mhm.
binge. It's okay to get on there, but as long as you wash it off, it's okay. You can see the road and keep driving.
Mm.
And I thought that was great. And then it reminded me that there was a time period where I was like, oh, that's it. I'm all about personal development. No more like TV, no nothing, just books and courses and coaching calls and things like that. And then I wasn't getting anywhere either because I wasn't actually taking action. I was just consuming so much that I wasn't taking action on my actual business. And that's kind of like if you ever get caught in a thunderstorm and it's raining so much, you have so much education,
Mm.
so much motivational stuff that no matter how fast your wipers are going, you still have to put on the caution lights and you got to slow down, and it slows your progress towards your goal. So then I was like, oh, it's about intentionality. It's about being aware of what you're consuming and being okay and having that balance. And it's like, yeah, I need to make sure that I wash my windshield every once in a while, but it's okay for me to go a little off road and get a little dirty here and there. And same thing with like going out and eating ice cream. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm a meatball eating champion. I placed first in a meatball eating competition, and
Rock on,
back
champ. There you go.
back in July, I placed second in a donut eating competition. So
Is
I
that on your
love
resume? Tell me that's
it's
on your
it,
resume.
it's on the bottom. It's on the fine print.
That's great. Yeah. No, it is. The consumption thing is so interesting. I think Hermosi said this recently. It's like, if you listen to podcasts and you just get into the realm, but if you're not intentionally looking at it of how you're actually going to implement something, you're disguising your entertainment as personal growth. And it's so easy to do. And, one of my favorite stories, Rob, was with Lin-Manuel Miranda when he found the idea for Hamilton, most popular Broadway show of all time. He did it on vacation. Like he finally actually got out away from all the noise. And that's when this opportunity, and he just thought of this idea, and that's where Hamilton came from. So I think it's that it's okay to have like the entertainment factor, but just know what it is that you're consuming. It's like I think
Mhm.
the struggle comes from when you're so deep into like personal development books or reading even like health and fitness books, and like you're just consuming so much stuff thinking that you're doing things on the right realm. But if you have so much consumption without any actual delivery of it, it's just another form of entertainment. You're just disguising it. So then when you actually do go to do something entertaining, like listen to music or watch a movie just because you like it, there's some like a guilty feeling behind that as well. And it's a weird trend to get into, but I've had a lot of conversations with people I've worked with on that same realm. So it's like, no, like if you go for a walk, yeah, throw on some music. Just know, like, yeah, you're just going for a walk, throw on some music or listen to silence. Or if you're listening to a podcast, like that's fine, but say, like, okay, what am I going to take from this and actually utilize in my life? Just, I think the intentionality of it is what makes it either, a poison or a remedy.
Yeah. I was at a point where I was just listening to so many podcasts and books, and I couldn't even tell you anything that I had listened to. And I had to get into the habit of, okay, after I listen to an episode or if I listen to a chapter, I need to write down what I actually listened to. Otherwise, it's just noise in the background and I'm not paying attention.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
Luca Hussever taught me that when he came on the podcast. I love Luca. He has a great podcast too. And at the end, he said, he's like, after listening to this, like, write down what's one thing that I took from this that I can implement. And he says he does that with everything that he does. And voracious reader, voracious, just consumer of information. But he always asks himself that question after each thing, like, what's one thing I'm going to take and I'm going to implement into my life? And I think especially on people who are listening who are in the business development, that entrepreneurial type, work and trying to get a lot of growth in their life, just asking that one question sometimes will just take what you're taking from entertainment into actually something you can utilize.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Rob, dude, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time. As I said, I really love the message that you have out with the work that you're doing. And yeah, I appreciate it. I'm grateful for you, man.
Hey, I thank you so much. This was fun. I loved chatting. Excited always to kind of share some of my experiences and insights. So thank you for having me on, man.
No doubt. Absolutely. If people want to connect more with you, check out more of the work, what's the best place that we can direct them?
Quickest and easiest place is Instagram, just first last name Rob Tracz, and answer DMs, so questions, anything, just totally open book.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, brother. Really appreciate it. Listeners, thank you so much. And I'll connect with you on the next one. All right. Peace.